Welcome back to my channel. Here we are in Barry, on Barry Island. But there's more to Barry Island than just the main beach, which is Whitmore Bay, lovely as it is. There are actually 4 beaches in Barry. Around the point there, which is Nell's Point, there's Colley's Walk. You can walk around the point and that'll take you to Jackson's Bay, a lovely, quieter little beach. I mentioned Whitmore Bay. There's a lot here. The fun fair's set behind. There's the 2 promenades, west and east. And that's where Marco's Cafe is, where Gavin and Stacey did a lot of their filming. But there's a lot more to Barry than Gavin and Stacey, and I'm going to tell you all about it. So that's Friars Point. If you walk over the headland there, you come to a beautiful bay called Watchtower Bay. Again, it's much quieter than Whitmore Bay. And then, if you keep going, you come to Cold Nap, the Pebble Beach. There's a lot to offer here. There's a lot of choice and a lot of history. And I'm going to tell you all about that now. Before we look at our first beach, Jackson's Bay, let me take you to St. Barrack's Chapel, which is on the cliff above it. There's not much left, just the ruins and foundations, but also an interesting information panel. So, who was St. Barrack? Well, according to tradition, he was a disciple of St. Cadoc, one of the great Welsh saints. He's said to have lived during the early Christian period, when saints and missionaries were establishing religious communities throughout Wales. The traditional story tells that Barrack and another disciple, Gwalches, were returning with St. Cadoc from the island of Flatholm when they drowned in the Bristol Channel. Barrack was said to have been buried on Barry Island. Only the foundations and remains of the medieval chapel survive today, but they provide a remarkable link between modern Barry and its early Christian past. And it's interesting to know that St. Barrack gave Barry its name. So looking down from St. Barrack's Chapel, here's Barry Dock, or at least the marina and the entrance to the dock. In the distance there's Sully Island, and also you can see Flatholm, and then across the channel to Cleveland. But we're going to head down to Jackson's Bay. So Jackson's Bay is a beautiful little beach. Not many people know about it. I think it's mainly locals that go there. It's a very sandy beach and it's dog friendly, but at low tide it's quite muddy, so it's best to visit on the high tide. So from Jackson's Bay you can take Colley's Walk around Nell's Point to Whitmore Bay, as long as it's not an exceptionally high tide, that is. It offers wonderful views across the Bristol Channel along the way, and generations of local people and holidaymakers have enjoyed walking around this part of Barry Island, but many people don't know about it. It takes you from the quiet cove, Jackson's Bay, to the busy resort, Whitmore Bay. Nell's Point is where Butlins used to be, and there's a new bar there called the Mario Lounge, which we'll come back to later on. There's also a Coast Guard lookout. So let me know in the comments below, have you ever walked around Colley's Walk from Jackson's Bay to Whitmore Bay? And which do you prefer, the quiet Jackson's Bay or the lively Whitmore Bay. So the main beach is Whitmore Bay. It's very beautiful. Obviously the fun fair sits beside it. There's a very long esplanade which is beautiful to walk along, and at this end they've done a lot of work in preparing beach huts, a climbing wall, and also some tents that you can sit under and have a picnic. Just up the ramp from the beach huts, you'll see this memorial plaque to the Butlins Holiday Camp, which was opened from 1966 to 1986. It celebrates all those who holidayed or worked on this site, and Sir William Billy Butlin, showman and philanthropist. His true intent was all for our delight. So Billy Butlin opened his Barry Island holiday camp in 1966, bringing his famous formula of affordable family holidays to South Wales. Butlin's famous redcoats organised games, competitions and entertainment, making sure there was always something happening. It was fun for all the family. There were swimming pools, fairground rides, children's activities, sports, dancing and live entertainment. It made the camp a holiday destination in its own right, and in the evening it was showtime, with music, dancing, comedy, cabaret and shows, and many well-known entertainers appeared at Butlin camps during their heyday. For most people it was a week away before cheap foreign holiday packages became commonplace. It gave many working families the chance to enjoy an affordable seaside holiday. Who remembers Miners' Fortnight? Did anyone visit Barry Island then, or indeed Butlin's holiday camp? A little further along the esplanade there's a new addition to Barry Island called Fabulous. It's an ice cream parlour and coffee bar, and we sat there and had a lovely cup of coffee and a cake. It was really nice to sit there and take in the views and watch people playing on the beach and in the water. The coffee came with an extra free ice cream, which was lovely, and the cakes were really nice. We'd highly recommend this place. So one of the newest additions to Barry Island is the coffee shop Fabulous, where we've just had a lovely cup of coffee and cake. And then they've done a lot of work over here refurbishing the promenade, and there's new changing huts down at the end. The housing estate up on the cliff there is pretty much where Butlins used to be. And then up here we've got the fun fair. Who fancies going on that tall one there? Not me, that's for sure. From this angle you've got a great view of the whole beach, going right across to Friars Point and then out to the Bristol Channel. And oh look, there's an airplane coming in to land at Cardiff Airport. If you sit on the beach at Cold Nap, right underneath the flight path, it's good fun to watch the planes come and go. So let's look at Barry Island Fun Fair and amusement arcades. They've been around for 100 years or more, dating back to 1897. From traditional favourites such as Dodgems and the Waltzer to modern thrill rides, the Fun Fair remains one of Barry Island's best known attractions, standing just back behind Whitmore Bay, and then the railway station is behind that. The arcades are another essential part of Barry Island life. Quite noisy with flashing lights, coin pushers, grabber machines, and they operate around Paget Road and the Pleasure Park. And the Dante family took over the pleasure park in 2015. And since then, Henry Dante and his family have invested in new rides and attractions, continuing the long fairground tradition in Barry Island. Who fancies going on the big wheel or that revolving thing? It's massive. It looks like an astronaut training camp. If fun fairs really aren't your thing, here's something that might interest you. Barry War Museum and Heritage Centre. I went there last year for the first time and had a really good look around, and it's fascinating inside and offers so much history. It's actually contained within the railway station buildings. It was created and run by local volunteers, and it preserves the stories of Barry and its people, with displays and memorabilia exploring wartime experiences and the town's wider heritage. Interestingly, when I was in there, I found a picture of my grandfather, who fought in the First World War, and then in the Second World War he was part of the home front, and that's where he was pictured. Lovely to see, and such a surprise. There's a bit of a refurb underway at the minute, so it's closed and hoping to reopen at the end of August. And when it does reopen, it's only available on certain days of the week, so you have to check out its opening times before you make a plan to go there. So, who's travelled to Barry Island via the railway? Did anyone in your family serve during the Second World War? What parts of Barry's history would you most like to see preserved? While we're talking about the railway station, I wanted to let you know about Barry's steam train graveyard. Oh, I loved playing here when I was a child and crawling all over the steam trains. It was so fascinating, and I was an avid train spotter, so it was my ideal day out really. So when steam trains came to an end in the 60s, Barry Dock became the final resting place for hundreds of Britain's steam locomotives. But thanks to one man's vision and the passion of railway enthusiasts, many of them were given a second chance. So it was Dai Woodham, the man who saved the trains. 297 steam trains were dumped here for scrapping, and out of those, 213 were saved and rescued for the future. That's such an incredible achievement. So rather than immediately cutting up the locomotives, Dai Woodham's firm concentrated on scrapping the railway wagons, which were easier and quicker to dismantle. That's why the steam engines remained standing in long rows in the sidings for many years. And as the railway preservation movement grew, Dai was willing to sell locomotives to preservation societies and enthusiasts rather than scrap them, and some of them he actually gave away. And then the trains were preserved for heritage railways, and you can see many of them still running today around the whole country. So he really is an important figure in the preservation of British steam. Was anyone watching like me, crawling all over these steam trains at Barry Steam Train Graveyard? Who enjoyed travelling behind a steam locomotive, or still does on a heritage railway? And what memories do you have of travelling by steam train? Let me know in the comments below. I'd really love to hear from you. We'll move on now to the next bay, which is Watchtower Bay. So you cross over Friars Point from Whitmore Bay, and then you come to this beautiful expanse of sand with the old watchtower and the old harbour actually. It's really beautiful, and it's lovely that it's dog friendly. And again, most people head for the main beach and don't know about this place. And it's just a short walk, so it's often much quieter. So do take a look when you're next here. So I think this is my favourite beach. It's Watchtower Bay. There's the causeway there going up to the island where the railways run. And then there's the old harbour wall there. And then you've got Friars Point. And it's worth noting this beach is dog friendly, so this really is a great place to come. And look how deserted this is compared to Whitmore Bay. There's Steepham in the distance there again. And then if we spin round, there's and then on this square field here is where an open air Lido, or Lido, used to be. And then there's a boating lake just beyond that. And just behind those hedges is Cold Nap. Let's take a look. So before we move on to Cold Nap, let me tell you about Cold Nap Lido, or Lido, I'm never sure which. It was one of Barry's great seaside attractions. It was beside the Knapp Gardens and was a popular destination for generations of local families and holidaymakers. It opened as far back as 1926 and then closed in 1996 and was finally demolished and filled in 2004. And there were calls for it to be brought back, which I think would be just great, especially with all this warm weather we've been having. It was an enormous pool. There was plenty of room for swimming, and you can see how popular it was, and it could get quite crowded. For me, it was a vivid childhood memory, mainly because it was absolutely freezing. But we'd spend hours there having a picnic and people popping in and out of the pool. It was a real end of an era when the Lido closed and was demolished. And now there's just the square left. Where it was, they haven't really done much with it. Did anyone else ever visit the Knapp Lido? Can you remember how cold the water was? Maybe you learned to swim there. Let me know in the comments below. So then we come on to Cold Nap. And to the far end of Cold Nap, above the cliff there is Cardiff Airport. And it's great to sit there at the end of the far end of the beach and watch the planes landing or taking off depending on the wind direction. And this is another beautiful bay, but it's very different in its sort of characteristics really. There's quite a steep shelving pebble beach, so it's more tricky to get down onto the sand and to have a swim. But there's a car park all the way along the top of it, and many people just go there to take in the views and have a cup of coffee and a sandwich. There's usually a coffee shop van there trading. And in the distance you can see Roose Point, which is the most southerly tip of Wales, where I used to live. Well, still do. In Roose, that is. So here we are at the Cold Nap, and we've got the old boating lake. No boats now, just lots of swans. And also there's a children's skateboard park, which is a nice addition, I guess. And then a magnificent sweeping bay over to Porthcurry Park, where there's a lovely viaduct. Cardiff Airport's just on the cliff behind that. And then over again is Roose Point, the most southerly tip in Wales. Sorry about the sound quality in that video. It was blowing a hoolie yesterday. Nice and warm, but the wind was really strong. Anyway, here's Porthcurry Country Park and Viaduct. That viaduct is so impressive, and the parks are 220 acres. I think there's a little golf course there as well now, which is nice to see. So there are nature trails, picnic areas, dramatic cliffs, and then of course the Pebble Beach. But let's look in a bit more detail at the Great Viaduct. So towering above the park is Porthcurry Viaduct, built for the Vale of Glamorgan Railway in the 1890s. Constructed from stone, its 16 arches rise to about 110 feet above the valley floor. There was a troubled beginning with its build. It was an enormous structure, and there were problems with subsidence and unstable foundations, which caused part of it to move. forcing the railway to use a temporary 2.5 mile diversion whilst major repairs were carried out. It finally returned to full use in 1900 and still carries trains today. It's Grade 2 listed. Another interesting point about Porthcurry is during the Second World War, British and American forces used large areas of the park to prepare for D-Day. Barry and Porthcurry helped send thousands of tons of equipment, vehicles and troops to Normandy. There's so much history in this place. You must come and take a look. And now it's time for Pub of the Week. So it's time for Pub of the Week. And this time I've chosen the Morio Lounge at Barry Island. It's a brand new cafe bar at Nell's Point, overlooking Whitmore Bay and the Bristol Channel. It opened in summer 2026 and transformed a former Victorian toilet block into a stunning new waterfront venue. It's a spectacular place to sit with a drink and watch the world go by. Morio serves breakfast, lunch and evening meals alongside coffee, drinks and cocktails. There are also dedicated vegan and gluten-free menus. Everyone's welcome. It's a great meeting place and they have board games there and children's activities, and it's also dog friendly. There are lots of lounges across Cardiff and Penarth, and this is the latest. We had a glass of wine and a coffee there, I think, a few weeks back, and it really is lovely and got a lot of potential. It had only been open a few days just then, but we definitely need to head back and have a proper meal. So has anyone else been there yet? How would you rate it? Let me know in the comments below. Another new addition to Barry Island is the very new Morio Lounge. It actually is a converted Victorian toilet block. They've done such a good job. And then looking back, we've got the fun fair again. And it's the main strip where you'll find lots of cafes, bars and amusement arcades. And then back to the beach again. Lovely. Well, there we are. I really hope you've enjoyed my walk around Barry and the 4 beaches. I think I prefer coming here out of season, to be honest with you. But it's beautiful whenever you choose to visit. You'll have a grand day out, I promise you that. And look at these flowers from last year. Everywhere's a bit more scorched at the minute, and I don't think they've bothered so much because of the heat waves. Anyway, if you'd like to support my channels, you can buy me a coffee at that web address. And when I say channels, I've got another channel specifically providing cognitive stimulation therapy activities for people with mild to moderate dementia. They're mostly memory quizzes. You could take a look if you like. Some of them are really good, I think. Anyway, I'll see you all next time. Bye for now.